So my name is Vanishree. Thank you everybody for being patient with all this technical issues. Um, I work on the Coda protocol and I'm presenting Ouroboros Samasika, which is a proof-of-stake consensus protocol for Succinct blockchains. And this is joint work with the entire team, but mainly in collaboration with Isaac and Ivan. So before we dive into the consensus protocol, let's quickly recall why a succinct blockchain is important. As we all know, the original goal with which Bitcoin was designed was decentralization, where all parties should be able to access, should be able to take part in the blockchain protocol and verify blockchain. But that is not the case anymore, as more and more transactions are getting recorded onto the blockchain, making the blockchain grow bigger and bigger. As a result, only a shrinking set of highly powerful parties are able to participate in the blockchain protocol, thereby strongly backpedaling on the goal of decentralization. So clearly, to have decentralization, even at scale, we need to have blockchains. We need blockchains to remain small at all times, and succinct blockchains offer just this. So what is a succinct blockchain? A succinct blockchain, we define it to be a blockchain which can be verified in time polynomial in the security parameter, so independent of the total number of transactions. So now having talked about and motivated succinct blockchains, note that the core underlying tool of a succinct of any blockchain protocol is its consensus protocol, which specifies how people should come to agreement on what should be entered into the blockchain next. But now the problem at hand is that we cannot use the existing consensus protocols. Why? Because either they do not provide the security guarantees we need, or they are not compatible with the succinct blockchain setting. So for security, we of course require that there is no reliance on a central entity, trusted entity, and we also want that the modeling is as close to real life scenarios as possible. But unfortunately, some protocols require that there is a trusted entity who helps newly joining parties with an advice on what the recent chain is. That's bad for decentralization, of course. And some of the protocols require that there is some common knowledge on what the participation level is at all times. And some of the protocols are not compatible with the succinct blockchain setting because they require you to hold on to the entire history of blockchain. So that's not going to work with the succinct blockchain setting. Because of these shortcomings of the existing protocols, we design a new proof-of-stake consensus protocol for succinct blockchains called Ouroboros Samasika. And you do not need any trusted entity to provide any sort of advice for any sort of help to newly joining parties. A newly joining party can just bootstrap from Genesis, from the Genesis block. And there is no restriction on parties on when they can join and leave the protocol. And our protocol is proven secure in the universal composability model, which means that you can plug our protocol into a bigger system and still expect the same security guarantees from Mint as you would do in the standalone setting. So these are the properties of our protocol. Now let's dive into our protocol, right? So let's begin with how the modeling is. Our protocol is set in the following setting. We divide time into these periods called time periods called slots, and each slot can either be filled with a block or it can be empty, depending on whether there was a slot leader selected for the slot or not. And of course, a party wins a slot with probability proportional to its stake. So that is the modeling, and the core aspect of the core aspect of any consensus protocol is its chain selection rules, which specify whenever there is a fork, there are multiple chains to choose from. Which chain should you choose? And we have two chain selection rules. The first chain selection rule is just the simple longest chain rule, like in Bitcoin, where you choose the chain with the highest number of blocks. While this by itself works for proof of work setting of Bitcoin, this rule alone won't work for the proof of stake systems. Why? Because proof of stake systems suffer from this vulnerability called costless simulation, because of which an adversary with nothing at stake can try different reruns of its execution to see what is favorable. Whereas in the case of a proof of work setting, you will need to spend as much more resources to do another rerun. So because of this vulnerability, an adversary can pose the so-called long-range attack, wherein an adversary would have forked the chain long back in history, and then over time, slowly, by using various adversarial techniques like grinding, she would manipulate the slot leader distribution in such a way that eventually the total number of blocks in the dishonest chain is higher than the number of blocks in the honest chain. So clearly, in this case, the longest chain rule will not work, right? So the Ouroboros Genesis protocol, which is our starting point, the way this protocol deals with this issue is that it says, do not look at the whole chain, do not compare the total number of blocks in the whole chain, but just look at a few slots following the fork where the adversary wouldn't have had the chance to skew distributions yet. So you just look at that period and compare the number of blocks in that period and pick the chain with higher number of blocks in that period. But note that what this rule means is that you will need to hold on to the entire chain history. Why? Because we may learn about a fork long after it has occurred. So you cannot be sure what information in history will be useful in future. So you'll need to hold on to the entire chain history. And if you think about it, this shouldn't be surprising. Why? Because when you need to tell apart two things that are similar, you need a lot of information about each of them to be able to tell them apart. But this requirement of holding on to the entire chain history will not work for succinct blockchain settings. So we designed this new chain selection rule where we maintain this window that we call there's this moving window that we call a min density window. So here is how it works. There is a window and it keeps moving with time. And at any given point in time, you just need to hold on to one single value. And what is that value? That value basically is the minimum of all the total number of blocks in any window we have seen. So you look at all the windows you have seen, you take the number of blocks in all the windows, and all you maintain is just the minimum of what you have seen. And you can of course do that by taking min of the previous min density value and the current total number of blocks. So you maintain just that value, and that is the idea. So why should this work? Why does this suffice and to squash all the necessary information in a succinct yet useful manner. So here is a quick high-level intuition on why this should work. Consider this fork. The high-level intuition is that in the honest block, because we are making this assumption that there is honest majority, it has to be that every block has consistently high number of every window has consistently high number of blocks, and in the dishonest chain, in the part where the adversary still hasn't had a chance to skew the distribution, there is initially some low number of blocks, and this will affect the min and value forever, because we are taking a min of all the window block densities. So this is a very high level intuition. The proof of security involves some amount of bookkeeping and case analysis, and finally we'll need to prove all the core properties of a secure transaction ledger, namely the chain quality, chain growth, and so on. So, but what I'm going to do right now is just, having given the high level intuition, let's see just at a high level what the proof structure will look like, so that if you're interested in going through the paper, it'll at least give you an anchor to read. That should help in reading the paper. So how does the proof work? Let's first quickly recall what is it that we want to prove. We want to prove that the the honest chain will get chosen, which means that the min and value for the honest chain has to be greater than the min and value for the dishonest chain. And we prove this in 2 steps. We first establish a lower bound for the number of blocks in any window in the honest chain, call it TLB. And in the next step, we prove some upper bound on the number of, we choose a specific window, and we say that in this window there is an upper bound on the number of blocks in the dishonest chain, and call that TUB. And it turns out that TLB is higher than TUB, and thereby proving what we want. Now, how exactly do we achieve each of these steps? So step 1 is relatively very simple. We just use a simple corollary of the Azuma-Hofting inequality, which is a generalization of the Chernoff bound. Chernoff bound, as we know, is just for Bernoulli, independent Bernoulli variables, but Azuma-Hofting inequality can be applied for any bounded independent random variables. So that's for step 1. For step 2, we do it again in 2 steps. We first identify a specific point in time in the dishonest chain and say that so here is what we prove. We specifically pinpoint a time on the dishonest chain and say that after this time, there cannot be an honest block, because an honest party will refuse to participate in it. And then what we do is we consider, in the next step, what we do is we consider a window that follows almost immediately after this point in time, and we will be proving an upper bound on the number of blocks for this window. So we will be taking into advantage 2 things. One is that there is no honest participation in it, so there is only dishonest participation in this. And the adversary wouldn't have had the chance to manipulate the slotted distribution yet. So there is only dishonest state contribution in this part, and we will be able to place an upper bound again based on a different corollary of the Asimov-Hofting inequality. So this is the high-level structure of the proof. I don't know how we're doing with time, but I can say a little bit more about the proof, but this is almost all I wanted to say.
Did you see that there's some questions in the chat? Maybe you want to take
a
look at that.
Okay.
Or actually, maybe we could read them out to you so that you don't have to look at them.
Oh, that's fine.
It's a bit easier.
Thank you.
Dara, I saw you had one. Do you want to ask yours?
Yeah, you're assuming that the honest chain has basically a high block rate within any given window. What happens if something goes wrong with the chain and that assumption isn't met?
Yeah, basically we force that assumption. We say that we say that people can join and leave the protocol, but any given point in time, the active stake, we put the lower bound on the active stake in our assumption.
Okay.
Yeah. Did that make sense, Dara?
Okay. I'm not sure I completely understand.
Oh, sorry, maybe I misunderstood your question. Let's see.
So suppose that there's some fault, for example, some bug in the code that causes a temporary problem with the blockchain. How would the protocol recover from that?
Right. So we are thinking of that to be a more system approach than within the protocol, where there is some kind of a voting on what the participation level is. But if this assumption cannot be met, then the protocol by itself won't be able to do anything.
Right. I guess you could always make a trace in the software and checkpoint the chain that you actually wanted to continue from. We had a similar problem on the Zcash testnet, where we didn't have enough mining power on the testnet, and basically someone manipulated the difficulty algorithm so that they had lots of hash power, and then they withdrew it suddenly, and the chain just completely stalled. To restart it from manual.
Yeah, and you can imagine such problems to occur in the initial part of the mainnet where people are still joining the network, right? Yeah, very nice.
Can you go into more detail on the proof?
Let's see. Let me expand more on this substep A, which is the part that I didn't cover much in the talk. So we use various. So here, let me step back and before talking about substep A, let me step back and talk a little bit more about the high-level part of the proof. So what we do is that we say that if there is no longer, assume that there is no long-range fork for a very long time, and then consider the first time there is a long-range fork. We prove that until there is as long as there is no long-range fork, everything works like everything can be proven secure just the way Ouroboros Prowse did. Because Ouroboros Prowse doesn't cater to the long-range attacks, and all the modeling is very much almost similar to Prowse. So having done that, then what we do is that in the proof, So this structure, part of the structure is similar to Ouroboros Genesis. And then the exact way we execute the remaining part of the proof is different in our case. Genesis also falls back on prowess, I mean. And now we are at a point where there is a long-range fork. Some honest party discovers a long-range fork. What is it that we want to prove? We want to prove that this honest party will apply this new chain selection rule we have. This honest party will continue to hold on to its chain, but so that is what we want to prove. Why is proving this sufficient? It is sufficient for two things. We need to consider two things, right? One is from the view of an honest party who is active, and one is from the view of a newly joining party. From the view of an honest party who has been there, we would want that this honest party doesn't switch over to the dishonest chain, and that's one thing we want to ensure. And the other thing we want to ensure is that a newly joining party will choose the honest chain. So we model a newly joining party, the choice of a newly joining party from, we treat it in a really in a weird way. We say that there exists this virtual honest party who doesn't have any stake and who has been online for a very long time, and there is this chain that this honest party has, and we consider that as the honest chain. We want that chain to be chosen by the newly joining party, right? So there is this virtual party, and we want that for this virtual party will not switch over to the dishonest chain. So that's what we prove. I said many things, but let me summarize to pinpoint what the core aspect is. So we rely, the first thing we do is that we say that until there is until the point there is a long-range fork, everything happens like prowess. Once there is a long-range fork, what we do is we consider this virtual honest party, and all we need to prove is that this virtual honest party doesn't switch over to the dishonest chain when it applies this new chain selection rule. So that is what we want to prove. Now going forward in the proof, so we just do these steps. The steps that I just described are the things that we do. Now, we saw a little bit about step 1, step 2, but let me say a little bit more about step 1 and about this inequality. So we just need to count the total number of honest slot wins in any given time period, and then we just play it. So that is the random variable we take into consideration, and then we apply this inequality on that, and we will be able to get this step 1 and the substep B. Excuse me. And now, how do we do this substep A? So we are talking about the part where there is this dishonest chain, and we want to place an upper bound on that number of blocks in the window. What we are trying to say is we want to pinpoint a time after which there is no honest participation. That is substep A, to recall. And the way we do it is we say that, okay, so there are multiple cases. Let me see. Can you guys see my mouse?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So let's see. Let me see what is the first case. It makes sense to talk first. Okay, so what we do is that we say that, okay, we rely on this property called chain growth property, and what this chain growth property does is that it gives us some assurance on the total number of blocks, right? It it again is the result of this. It again is the result of this bound we place on the number of blocks, right? Because of this property of chain growth, there is enough number of blocks we have in this part, right? This is the honest chain, and we can say that there are a lot of blocks here. And so that is one thing to bookkeep, that there are a lot of blocks here. There are a lot of blocks here. And then we say that after a time about a window length, consider the first time there is an honest block, right? So we look at that block, and the first time there is an honest block, we note that down, and then we say that, and then we go into the dishonest block and consider this period in time, which is as long as almost the window. And then we say that consider the case that this, the number of blocks here is greater than the number of blocks here, right? Consider the case that so here is what we are going to do. Case 1, number of blocks here is greater than the number of blocks here. In that case, if there is a honest block here, we'll arrive into a contradiction. How do we arrive into a contradiction? So there is an honest block here, there is an honest block here, and there are a lot of blocks here. This immediately gives contradiction on this other property, which is the chain prefix property, which says that, you cannot, when there is a fork, and when there is a fork, you cannot have honest block here and here, and a lot of blocks before. Why? Because the prowess already gave some kind of a guarantee that honest blocks cannot have disagreement for that long, right? So that's the high-level idea of chain growth property. So that we prove. That's case number 1. And case number 2, if this is long, if this part has a lot of blocks in the dishonest chain, then again, if there is a block, if there is an honest block here, there is a technical caveat which needs to be considered. You cannot just right away apply the. Let me see. Oh yeah. Just recalling if there were, no, actually, let me try to construct the argument here. So if there is a block, if there is an honest block here, and this has higher number of blocks, then the number of, this has higher number of blocks, then there is again a chain prefix violation. Why? Because the chain prefix violation is by a parameter that is again higher than the amount of growth we have had in the honest chain, which by Ouroboros prowess, it happens with very low probability. So that's a high-level structure of the proof. I don't know how coherent that was, but
so I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to kind of wrap this up. It does look like the platform is working again, and I think we're going to try to get back on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this video and actually probably put it on the Crowdcast at a later time. So what I'm noticing is there's probably going to be quite a few people. They've just told me, like, a lot of the Europeans just went to sleep, or they're going to sleep soon. So they're probably going to watch a lot of this tomorrow.